You're listening in on an animated discussion about the new Batman adventures with two experts in their fields. I'm Joshua Unruh, superhero scholar.
And I'm Caleb Masters, your friendly neighborhood film critic extraordinaire from the Cinematropolis.com. And today's topic is the ultimate thrill. Oh boy, Joshua! Talk about adrenaline junkie. I know I was jacked up on my coffee when I was watching this episode, and it was the right time. It was the right time because I was getting edge of my seat, fired up. We got Batman on rockets. We got Batman with the jetpack. We're apparently traveling through the wilderness that's right outside of Gotham. We're going all over the place. Man, so much adrenaline. It's great. Very fitting.
I really enjoy this episode quite a lot, Caleb. And I think it's because it's just unapologetically an adventure episode with a pretty tight plot. And maybe it's a little bit of a dead cat bounce because the last couple episodes of New Batman Adventures have been particularly lackluster to me. Maybe it's a little bit of a dead cat bounce because a lot of the stuff in this, like Roxy entirely, is made to delight me. But I really like this episode a lot.
Joshua, I 100% agree. And here's the thing. I really love this episode. It's lots of fun. I actually feel like it's extremely light on maybe analysis, but, it's a lot of fun. And Roxy's a super fun character. We're going to talk about her design in a minute. It's great. It feels like one giant excuse just to have as many set pieces as an episode as possible. Where frankly, after we've had a couple of lackluster episodes of the new Batman Adventures where maybe they're accidentally or intentionally saying not great things, I'll take a fluff episode where they're not saying a lot and just having fun.
Yes, please. I mean, let's not forget, you and I enjoy when there's the more interesting things to look at or talk about, or when they're nodded at or missing. But at the end of the day, this was a show kids were supposed to watch after school. So just do some super tight action adventure plots and give us some new villains like Roxy Rocket, who I'm just going to say right now is perfect. She's perfect, Caleb. I love her.
Hey, Joshua, I have a confession to make.
Yes.
I hope my significant other isn't listening, but I think I have a crush on Roxy Rocket because she seems like very fun and wears her look very well. And it just, it's very charming. It's so freaking charming.
My man, that is a Halloween opportunity in the making is what that is. So just file that away. Let's dig into that look because, again, I'm going to own that this thing they do with her is genuinely created in a lab to delight me personally. But I also think it really works with the new Batman Adventures in a way that it just works aesthetically. So she's got a retro aviator look, right? I love it. The bomber jacket, fur-lined collar. I love those leather caps and goggles. I love it. All of it. And I think it works in Gotham City because we've mentioned before, a little less in New Batman Adventures than in BTAS, but Gotham is a city that does not know what decade it's in from one moment to the next.
She is perfect for Gotham because, like you said, she's a woman out of time. She has the edginess of a 90s like villain, like the adrenaline junkiness of it all really gave me a 90s vibes, but her aesthetic is definitely 1950s. So there's like leaning into a vaguely noir feel. Like if she had popped up in an episode of the Batman the animated series and the original run, I would have been like, yeah, she fits right in. She fits into that kind of like weird old school noir vibe. But no. She's got the best of both worlds. And I think, for what they were trying to accomplish here, I agree. I would say she's perfect. They give her the right lines. They give her, she's got a really quippy dialogue in here. She's got a great look, got a great voice. Like this, she really is, a character I totally had forgotten about, but now that we're on this episode, I'm like, wow, I kind of wish we would have figured out how to get more mileage out of Roxy Rocket because she's really stellar here.
Okay, I'm gonna do a little confession on mic right here, which is I have been really excited to talk about this episode, not because I think it's like this pinnacle of, all this metaphor and everything going on. It's just that I think Roxy Rocket is amazing and she deserves better. And you're saying you forgot about her. I bet you I think about Roxy Rocket 3 or 4 times a month. Seriously. I operate a lot of my fiction in this very like pulp specifically era or a retro pulp where it's like, let's do a modern take on pulp stuff. And yeah, she's great. I mean, even the juxtaposition of a 30s era pilot on a 1950s era rocket, it shouldn't work. And yet, because of what's going on around her and the way they write her and just the whole thing just comes together. Man, and I hope that after this, I've infected all of our listeners and you all will also think about Roxy Rocket at least once a week from now on till the day you die, because she deserves it.
She is that great that you should think about her every day. You wake up, you brush your teeth, look in the mirror, and you're like, God, Roxy Rocket, let's watch that episode again.
What would Roxy Rocket do today?
She would blow this building up and ride out on the rocket.
That's probably what it would be. Yeah, you're not wrong. While going really, really fast. Okay, so transitioning to our other sort of secondary villain here, we have briefly discussed the Penguin before when he showed up in, I believe, Joker's Millions. But I want to revisit him just a little bit because I don't think we've really seen any of his hench people, and we get them here. And so I want to talk about him for a minute to lay the groundwork for how I feel about his hench ladies. As we mentioned before, this version of the Penguin is much less mired in the extremely 90s Batman Returns Danny DeVito look. I get what they were doing in that movie, and it's an unfortunate bit of timing that that's what got into BTAS, because I don't think they ever did anything with it in BTAS. It was just kind of inexplicable and like these vague gestures at brand synergy. So from that perspective, I think that this really retro look for him is better. I do think it's an improvement. I also don't think it quite works with the overall aesthetic of either BTAS or New Batman Adventures. So I do think it's an improvement, but I don't think it actually works. So live in that complicated space with me.
Okay, so a couple thoughts here. Firstly, just on this, specifically on the design element, I think I agree. I like this design better. It needs to live somewhere in the middle. He doesn't have the overtly like Birdie, look with the beaky nose and the bigger eyes. So I like that he looks more human. Because for me, it makes it more believable that he could operate as pass as a quote unquote normal citizen, not a criminal, right?
Right. Yeah.
But this feels like it goes too far the other way, where there's not really any of the traits about the Penguin that really are Penguin-esque, other than he's got like a top hat and he's committed to that weird sort of like retro. I don't even know what you'd call it, like retro or Las Vegas.
Well, like that tops and tails kind of thing that he has going on. And I'll tell you, I think I can agree with you that it goes too far the other direction, but for different reasons, because this is actually what the Penguin has looked like in the comics the vast majority of the time. Like, this is actually very much a return to form that the kind of 90s Batman Returns was a massive departure from, which I think is why it doesn't quite work for me here, even if I think it's better than that weird monstrous thing.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the other thing, and I know we're going to get to the henchman in a second, the other thing I just want to call out, and I don't recall if we mentioned it in the Joker's Millions episode, but I don't think it's ever super textual. Listeners can please do correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it's ever super explicit in the text that, Batman the Animated Series, the first run, was definitely more on the criminal side of everyone knew he was a criminal, and he had been arrested, and he attempted to do sort of over the top, goofy, villainous things with animals. Versus this version, who is more like a fixer. He is the guy who appears to be legit, like almost like a more traditional mob boss. He appears to be legit, but he's doing all sorts of obviously illegal things under the table that he is trying very hard to, disassociate with himself publicly. And I actually think that's a much more interesting and compelling place for the Penguin overall. But again, that change has occurred, and I just wanted to note that because I think it's a very an interesting and good choice overall.
Yeah, I really agree. That character choice, that niche that he's filling now, makes so much more sense. The character changes make a lot more sense than the look changes do. However, as you mentioned, we're back to a big focus on tuxedos, tops and tails, which brings us to Penguin's henchwomen. I have some mixed feelings about them. I think that I kind of hate their whole objectified look, but I think it works for the Penguin in a way that it did not work when we had this conversation about Mr. Freeze's snow bunnies.
Well, okay, let's remember this is a Bruce Timm show. The man was known for the pinups, so I feel like anytime there's an opportunity to do scantily clad women, it's done that way, right?
I agree, and I think that's where my conflict comes from, is that if I believed that they were doing this as a purposeful characterization of the Penguin, I would love it. But because they just kind of default to this all the time, it feels lazy and exploitive. And so I'm in this halfway place where I'm like, this actually makes sense for this character, and therefore I like it. But it's part of a larger issue that this show has, therefore I don't like it. It's very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth calling out, and I don't know. I hadn't put too much thought into that just because we've seen it with so many other villains before. But no, I totally. Yeah. I mean, I think it's just a larger question about, do we feel comfortable women being drawn this way for children? And your mileage may vary depending on your perspective.
Right. Yes. You may or may not enjoy that. Yeah. Okay. I think the last thing that we have is actually a piece of really well done technology, which is not a thing that we've had as much as we'd like to on Superman and Batman of late. Batman's jetpack is dope, right?
I want this jetpack. I for the longest time I said Boba Fett's got the coolest jetpack. He's got a rocket on the back. It's like nice and small and compact. No, this jetpack is where it's at. Give me the Batman jetpack. I love how pointy it is. I love how he wears it like a backpack, but then it's also got like a head mount. I love it. I want it. I want this toy, which I know is exactly why they put it in this episode.
Yeah, but they actually put the time in, I think, because I think that, for instance, the gauntlets that he gets, the fact that this thing integrates to his regular costume is good, right? Like, we've seen some alternate costumes for Batman. For instance, the fireproof outfit in Torch Song, and that one was pretty good, but it's still like a whole other outfit. The idea that a jetpack that Batman might need on any given night, that it just like integrates over his existing costume, I think is really, really cool and smart. The wings do a lot of the work that the cape would be doing while also being wings. The gauntlet things give us a lot of technology opportunities later. Like if he just hits a button and a cold ray comes out of it another time or whatever, I'd buy it, right? Because there's all these extra buttons. And this is a big one for me. It latches like a seatbelt over his chest, and we do not sacrifice the chest emblem. It's a different emblem, but we still have one. Like it goes on to his existing outfit without replacing or undoing any of it. I just think it's a great design. I would also like this toy.
All right, Warner Brothers, we know that some fancy executive up there who's planning to relaunch another toy line. I don't know. I can't remember which producer makes these toys. McFarlane Toys, maybe. I don't know. Joshua and I will happily, do an unboxing video if you were to send us this toy and promote it on this podcast. So, just reach out.
Yeah, and honestly, if you don't do that, you've sold 2 of them, I think. So that's at least 2 in the can, right? It's 2 in the box.
Josh, you don't tell them that because you want it for free. Okay.
We just have to be honest.
Okay,
we just have to be honest.
That's fair.
Okay, so we've talked about how great Roxy's look is. I really want to drill down into how good the character choices they make for her are. And I really do think that they're good. They're smart. They're not super weighty. We're not saying any really big new things, but these choices are great. The idea of a stunt woman, like a person who is addicted to danger and adrenaline, manages to turn that into a career, except that then that addiction continues to spin wildly out of control. And now she has to go do these much bigger, more robust things in order to satisfy that high, that need for that high. She has to cross over to the wrong side of the law. She has to go after Batman because no other chase is ever going to compare. For reasonably low key, like low stakes plot stuff in this episode, these character choices are perfect. They are really well thought out, and they get us exactly the character that we need for this episode. And I could have seen Roxy becoming a recurring Batman villain who just had to find bigger and better adrenaline highs every time, in the same way that Joker's got to make a bigger joke, or Mr. Freeze has got to do more stuff to save his wife, or whatever.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's sort of the gimmick there. It works really well. I really am interested. I guess my biggest question is, when writing this episode or preparing for this episode, did they land on Roxy first and then figure out how to do all the crazy set pieces? Like, or did they say, we want to have just a set piece episode? We're doing all sorts of crazy stuff. How do we get there? So which one came first? I think either way, obviously the episode, is great. The episode we got was fantastic, but I am kind of curious there because I do find that the to your point, this concept is very, very strong. The design is very strong. Pretty light on depth, but I think, she's a one-trick pony, but that one trick is really, really fun, and it works perfectly for everything they're trying to accomplish here. I mean, we got Zeppelin heists. We got Batman on a rocket. I mean, I mentioned a bunch at the top. Like, just seeing how many crazy things they can throw into an episode. It's so much freaking fun. But yeah, I think they land the gimmick well. I'm disappointed to hear it doesn't sound like we see Roxy again, but there's still a chance they could bring Roxy back in the comics, right, Joshua?
So actually, I think I'm a little fuzzy on the timing of this. I think that Roxy might have appeared first in the comic book tie-in to the animated series, the Batman Adventures. I think she appeared in the number 1 annual for that. And she has had a cameo, I think only a cameo, in the pages of Detective Comics in number 822, which was written by Paul Dini. So she's gotten a little bit more love. But man, I honestly don't think as much as she deserves, really. And to your point, I think you're right about her being a one-trick pony, but the fact that it is built into the trick that it needs to get bigger and more interesting and louder and, more in your face every time.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that helps. The fact that the one trick has to get bigger every time, I think really overcomes the fact that it's one trick, or it could have.
Right. I mean, or, you could utilize another more mastermind type villain, even like in the context of the Justice League, for instance, who's like, she's got this talent and this thirst and this drive for bigger and better, and figure out how to utilize that to up the ante for your heroes. So, there was huge opportunity to do more with her, for sure.
Can you imagine her as the getaway driver for the Suicide Squad? Come on. Ooh. That's spectacular. That's just leaving money on the table, you guys. Come on. So to that end, I think that we've largely covered all the best stuff about the Penguin being in this episode, except I want to bring up something I really like from a world building aspect. Because for me, being a person who has experienced these long running serials of superhero stories for so long, I do like stories that have a beginning, middle, and end, but I also like things that make the world better overall, or that become tools that you can go to really enhance the world, the universe. And I feel like Penguin as a fixer really does that, because we might have a problem with Roxy all of a sudden being a master criminal and knowing exactly who to rob and when to rob them. But the minute that we discover it's Penguin who's feeding her that information so that he can get a cut, it is excellent. And it makes me realize that you could do that for all kinds of second or third tier Batman villains that you want to bring in for one episode. But you're like, but how do they know anything that they're doing? The Penguin. That's how. I love that bit.
Well, I like it. It again positions him as a mastermind, but he can hide in plain sight. He's not. He officially is not breaking any laws. He's gone straight, but he's able to kind of whisper in the ears of all of these, like you said, second and third tier villains to up them a level. And I also like that, again, going back to what I mentioned earlier about how he sort of shifted his role between different series. Textual. I did like, and this is where we get into that like weird like nod to world building that's not really been super explicit, which is when Batman is dangling the Penguin off of his balcony, which was a great scene, by the way, and just says, let's talk just like old times. Like, hey, we've been here before. Good. You used to be a criminal. I did this all the time. Let's do it again because I know you're up to no good. It just is a very nice nod to the fact that these guys have been doing this for a long time, even if it's not been like, it's not clear exactly how long.
Yes, I agree. I mean, anything that can also kind of make the world feel more lived in, I think is good. And anything that ties the continuity of New Batman Adventures more tightly to BTAS without tripping itself up, I think is wise choices also. To that end, I do have one big question about this episode that actually turns out, as we were discussing it, to have some continuity precursor. And that's the fact that all of a sudden we find ourselves in New Mexico or Arizona at the end of this episode. Except it seems like they're not that far out of Gotham to find all of these canyons and plateaus and whatnot.
Well, Joshua, we don't know where Gotham's at. It could be anywhere. It could be, I mean, I always envision it more like Chicago, but we don't know if it's in Illinois. It could be in New Mexico. It could be in Arizona. Who knows? It could be in Canada. Well, I guess they are American, so JK.
I mean, it's pretty well firmly established as East Coast, Eastern Seaboard. So it's weird, but as you and I were talking about this, we remembered that there is possibly some continuity to nod at here. I always assumed while watching one of our favorite episodes, The Forgotten, that they were taken to a prison camp way outside of Gotham, right? Like just far outside of Gotham.
They had to fly a helicopter. That's how far it was.
Right. But they never actually say so. And now with Roxy, I'm just like, okay, apparently 15, 20 miles outside of Gotham, far enough to justify a helicopter ride, there are all of these wild New Mexico style canyons. Okay.
Joshua, again, it's not Gotham, East Coast, maybe. I mean, it's all nebulous. I don't feel like the animated series has been very specific. So for all we know, it's an imaginary city near an imaginary canyon. Apparently it could be like in a valley somewhere where right outside the valley, there's tons of different types of, I don't know. There's lots of different terrain, I guess. And, we did see, I guess, another kind of nod to like the mountains. Again, it's all very ambiguous, but way back when we were watching the Catwoman's introduction, I believe they were heisting a train that was going through the mountains. So, I mean.
Oh, that's true.
I guess there is established mountains somewhat in the vicinity of Gotham within 100 miles, I guess. But Roxy Rocket found him. And Joshua, I just gotta say, whether or not the train makes sense, Batman riding a rocket chasing Roxy Rocket, I feel like that should be framed and hung on a wall somewhere because it's just a great image.
Oh, yeah. That's why I actually refused to complain about this. It was just something interesting that nod to my son I missed. And he came in and was like, where are they? And I just was like, that's a good point, kid. But then, we thought about some other things. All right, Caleb, I feel like there's one last thing that I want to bring up while discussing this episode. And it's probably the only part of the episode that I don't unequivocally love, right? Like the rest of this episode doesn't do a lot of big ideas, but the ideas that it does really well. And I love the idea of Roxy kind of falling in love with Batman just because he's the ultimate adrenaline rush. I'm down with all that. The thing that bothers me is that the climax of this episode is uncomfortably similar to an, if you will, climax for what is ostensibly a children's show. It's the kind of thing that I don't think any child watching would pick up on at all, because how could they? They don't have the context. But as an adult, I low-key want to know what the actual hell they thought they were doing.
I thought they were doing exactly what you said they were doing, sneaking something in that adults would like that kids wouldn't pick up on.
Yeah, but it's... Okay, you know what? I'm prepared to be called a puritanical parent. It just felt a little much for me. And maybe it stands out because it's the only thing in the episode that I don't just love to death. But I felt like I wasn't doing my job of going, what? If I didn't
Oh, no, you're calling
about it.
That is an accurate call out. I had a different take on that, but I think you're 100% correct. And this was something very prevalent in the 90s. You can go look at any number of Disney movies that came out in the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
Aladdin, The Lion King. Animators did this, at least at the time, it seemed to be a popular thing to do. Ooh, what if we get edgy and sneak this in and the kids will never know, but those adults are going to think it's funny, which is a little juvenile. But, it didn't take me out of it as much as it definitely had some energy to it, some sexual energy there. I can't deny that. What I did think was kind of funny, though, was it kind of, in the moment, it revealed that she wasn't as committed to the gimmick as she had claimed.
Yes.
But see, we don't get into the quote unquote climax until she there's a moment where she gets scared, and then true to character, she She gets scared, but then embraces it and says,
yes,
wait, no, this is let's just do it. And she's under the impression they are about to die. So she's like, yes, one last stunt. It's got to be the best one. I liked that. It does have some weird energy to it for sure. But, I thought it was nice. And I also, once again, love that Batman wins by calling her bluff a little bit. She was willing to go to the edge, but she wasn't willing to die. But then I think even he was a little surprised when she got excited. She went from scared to excited, So it just, it was a fun way to wrap it up that did have some very weird energy to it.
Other than the weird energy, it's a really strong couple of minutes considering how much character stuff we really get for both our protagonist and our antagonist. It's, again, this show doesn't do any really big stuff, but the stuff that it does amazingly well. And with that in mind, Caleb, let's assume that everybody loves this episode just as much as you and I do. What else should they be watching, reading, or experiencing to keep the adrenaline rush that is the ultimate thrill going?
Okay, so I got two different recommendations here. One of them is kind of a cheat because it's actually a series. But first recommendation, a movie about a stuntman, Drive, called 2011's Drive, Nicholas Winding Refn film starring Ryan Gosling. Firstly, if you haven't seen it, what are you doing? Go watch it right now. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's a fun genre exercise. Ryan Gosling doesn't even have a name. He's just the driver.
It's so good.
He's just playing a stuntman, but then he also he's a stuntman that has a criminal, like he does some criminal stuff on the side to pay the bills. Man, I love this movie, but it's really great, very stylized. It's got a couple of moments where it's really high adrenaline, but honestly, most of it's, I would say, more low key, like genre exercise, particularly in the theme. Like it's got very Western vibes to it, while also having the 80s aesthetic. So check that out. And the next up, I mean, guys, no matter how you feel about Tom Cruise, and you can hate him, you can love him. No matter how you feel about him as a person, this man is on the same level as Jackie Chan in the sense that something is driving this person, and I don't understand what it is, to continue to do death-defying stunts themselves. Mm-hmm. So Tom Cruise and the Mission Impossible series, in my opinion, are the greatest stunt work of our generation. I mean, the original Mission Impossible is pretty light on the stunts. You get to 2 is when John Woo comes in, you see some silly stuff, and then number 3 takes on sort of like the spy espionage thriller. All 3 of those first 3 all have some really good stunts in them that Tom Cruise, of course, does. But it's not until Ghost Protocol, the 4th one, where they really start saying, how far can we push Tom Cruise? So he climbs up he climbs up skyscrapers that he actually climbs up in real life. In the Fallout, the most recent one, he is literally riding, like hanging by a rope from a helicopter, climbing up the rope as the helicopter's flying through canyons. Yes, he actually did that. I mean, like the motorcycle and chase in Rogue Nation. And he also did this crazy underwater stunt for Rogue Nation. Just, the man is insane. He is actually insane. And you know what? No matter how I feel about him, I just want to keep seeing him do insane things because the stunt work is, in my opinion, some of the greatest spectacle in modern cinema. And not just because, it's death-defying stunts, it's because we know, like, he actually does them. It's not CG. It's like he's really doing crazy, crazy things. And in fact, if he doesn't go to space by the time this the series is done and he dies doing one of these stunts, I'm sure it'll be how it goes, I will be disappointed. So, Tom Cruise, you got 2 more movies to get to space at least. Joshua, how about you?
Well, first, let me ratify both of those choices for exactly those reasons. And especially, like, I don't want to hang out with Tom Cruise, like, at all. But as a man who keeps creeping further and further into middle age, watching him continue to do these stunts is simultaneously inspiring and humbling. So keep it up, kiddo. Keep it up. Maybe be a little less of a trash fire personally, but good work on the movies.
Hey, you know what? He's got strong stances on COVID, so I can respect that. That's good.
So I am going to go for a very aesthetically similar choice. My recommendation is The Rocketeer, a movie that Disney made in the 90s based on a comic book property that is just fantastic. Ace Pilot, down on his luck, stumbles into a jetpack that he uses to become a high-flying mystery man that fights Nazis and Nazi sympathizers.
Boom. I love it. Rocketeer it's a classic. If you haven't seen it, what are you doing? That's another one like Drive. Like, what are you doing?
What are you doing?
Go watch this episode. Go watch that movie right now.
Well, I'll tell you one thing you might have been doing. One thing you might have been doing is that it was difficult to come by for a while, but now it's available on Disney Plus. So if you're a Disney Plus subscriber, it's right there for you. And I could not recommend it more. And especially because it feels a little bit like Roxy. I don't know about in reverse, but kind of like they're opposite numbers to one another, right? Like for want of one decision or one situation, Roxy could have been the Rocketeer or the Rocketeer could have been Roxy. It just makes me think different things about this episode while also being a really great movie on its own.
Yeah, those Joshua, I second that recommendation. That's a great pairing, if nothing else for the aesthetic, but I think even like with the type of stunts she's doing, it really seems to pair well.
That about wraps it up for this animated discussion. If you enjoyed this conversation and would like to join in, come find us on Twitter. Caleb is at CMastersTalk, and I'm at Joshua Unruh, and the hashtag is Animated Discussion. Caleb, where else can people find you?
I'm the editor-in-chief and a contributor at the Cinematropolis, a website that specializes in in-depth film critique and analysis. We also have a podcast, The Cinematic Schematic, that you can check out on the website as well. We're in the middle of a really cool interview series about 3 films that help certain people get through the pandemic. I hope you'll check it out. We publish these in-depth essays on all types of films, and you can find those articles right over at thecinematropolis.com.
Remember that an animated discussion is a Pulp Diction Productions program and is 100% supported by listeners like you. To find out how you can keep this and our other shows in production, check out patreon.com/pulpdictionproductions. Show your support by pledging at Patreon or by leaving a great review on Apple Podcasts to make it easier for more people to find us and join in the discussion.
And the links to the Patreon, Apple Podcasts, our recommendations, and Twitter are all very easy to find right in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us for this animated discussion. We'll be back next time to talk about the Superman the Animated Series episode, Identity Crisis.
We'll see you back here. Same bat time, same bat channel.